Press the bell icon on YouTube and don't miss another update.
Namaskar. An Air India flight flying under the Vande Bharat Mission carrying people from Dubai to Calicut crashed in Calicut. The flight was carrying 174 adult, 10 infants, 5 crew members and 2 pilots. A total of 191 people. The flight skid because of the weather, because of the wet runway, and fell into a valley 30 feet down. Fortunately, the flight didn't catch flames. As we speak, according to the collector of Malappuram, 145 people are injured and admitted to 2 different hospitals, one in Malappuram and other in Kozhikode. And 22 out of this 149 were in critical condition and 18 of them are dead today. 22 had minor injuries, they were given first aid and discharged. The rest are still in the hospital and they're still being taken care of. The question today arises, who is responsible for this crash? What is responsible for this crash? And why did this crash happen? And why didn't we stop? Because an incident like this had happened in 2010. In an airport very similar to Kozhikode Airport, very similar to Calicut Airport, and that was Mangalore Airport. Both are tabletop airports. A lot of recommendation, a lot of rules were made in 2010 after that aircraft crashed. What happened to those rules? Were they followed or were they just forgotten? I spoke to one of India's foremost aviation safety consultant, Mr. Mohan Ranganathan. In fact, he is an expert on wet runway operations. I tried to find out from him who is responsible for this accident. Let's speak to him. Let's get into the show. Thank you so much for coming in, Mr. Ranganathan. Mr. Ranganathan, Air India plane crashed. Why did it crash? What was wrong?
To start with, he was an experienced pilot, but he was landing, which is absolutely dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
We had warned about it when I was part of the Civil Aviation Safety Advisory Council that runway 10 in wet conditions is positively dangerous, and they chose to ignore that. My letter is there where I had pointed out that it has a very severe downslope, and towards the latter half of the runway, it's got heavy rubber deposits because aircraft landing on runway 28 leave a lot of rubber deposits and they do not remove the rubber regularly. So any runway in wet conditions with rubber, the friction values are 0 practically and you cannot stop. Mm-hmm. And moreover, in monsoons, the winds are all westerly. Mm-hmm. He should be landing from the other direction, runway 28. If you cannot land on runway 28, it is positively dangerous to land on 10 with a tailwind. Mm-hmm. You know, he's got wet runway, he's got rain, and he's got tailwind. Because for every knot of tailwind, you're going to be eating up that much more runway for landing. And at the end of the runway, now as per the International Civil Aviation Organization requirement, you must have a mandatory 60-meter strip, and beyond that, 90 meters is mandatory, but in a terrain like Mangalore and Calicut, we should have 240 meters. So you should have a clear space of 300 meters. Now, when I did the inspection 8-9 years back, they did not have. But if you look at beyond the ILS antenna, there's a drop of about, you can see that on all the visuals on TV.
Yes.
There's a drop of about 70 meters. Now, the aircraft has fallen there and broken. Now, there are questions asked how it didn't catch fire. While Mangalore had caught fire, it's for the simple reason that in Mangalore,
Mhm.
they had that illegal concrete structure. Just one second.
Sure.
They had the concrete structure, which is illegal.
Mhm.
So the aircraft wing hit that, and as it was going down the slope, it spilt all the fuel onto the hot engine. It caught fire,
Correct.
and the rescue never reached the aircraft. While in Calicut, it has fallen into that thing. The wings were not broken, so there was no fuel spillage on hot engines. So that is the reason why it didn't catch fire. You know,
And that
there have
is
been other accidents worldwide. You know, you had in Guyana, you had one in West Indies. They don't catch fire; they just break up. But when the wing breaks and spills hot fuel onto the hot engines, they catch fire. So it is not that they've done something which is different from other crashes. Passengers were very lucky that it didn't catch fire because of that reason.
Sir, you're saying that 9 years back, 9 years back, you suggested to the government that this is dangerous. This an incident like this could happen. Is that what you're saying, sir?
Yes, it is in
And
black and white with photographs. I put it on Twitter.
Mhm,
The
mhm.
the 4-page letter, I put it on Twitter
Correct.
because they never bothered to act on it. The only thing they did, Calicut also had that illegal concrete structure, and because we put pressure, they filled it up.
Correct.
And so that means the concrete structure was completely covered up. But otherwise, if they had it like before, this aircraft would also have ended up like that Mangalore crash with fire.
18 deaths. The government has to be blamed for it.
Absolutely.
The blood is in their hands.
Not only in their hands, I would say blood is in Supreme Court's hands. Because after the Mangalore crash,
Mhm.
there was a lawyer, Yashwant Shenoy,
Yes.
who had filed a PIL. Now, this was based on the PIL of Leo Saldana in 1997 in Karnataka High Court, where he had said that the lay of the land is such that an aircraft overshooting will go down 100 meters and people will die. And the Karnataka High Court dismissed that. His appeal to the PIL and Supreme Court had been set aside, and the court said the government shall ensure that all rules are complied with. And we proved that no rules were complied with. You know, so it was just a question of in the Mangalore crash, 158 people died, and nobody bothered.
Correct.
And when the PIL was filed by Shenoy, the bench in Supreme Court gave the entire file to the Ministry of Civil Aviation to assess if it was a worthwhile case. It's like asking a murderer, you decide whether you murdered someone.
Or not.
You
Correct.
know, so, that is exactly what. In fact, when that judgment was given,
this was which year, sir?
2013, and when that was done, I wrote a very strong mail to my uncle Justice Krishna Nair, saying that I've lost all faith in judiciary. And he told me to write a very strong article for a book which is coming out in his honor called Justice V.R. Krishna Nair Fitscript. I wrote a very scathing article criticizing the judges in that. And the same thing is happening now. You see, they will form a court of inquiry or a committee with hand-picked people who will write what they want. You see, unlike other countries, here everything is controlled by Ministry of Civil Aviation. Like experts or so-called experts write the report, and it is vetted by a Babu,
Correct.
who will delete all the sentences which criticizes either a DGCA or airline or airport authority, and they'll only blame pilots. Here the pilot is dead, so that's all that they care for.
Technically, whose job is it to react? Is it the job of the DGCA to react? Is it the job of International Airport Authority to react? Or is it the job of Ministry of Aviation to react? Whose job is it to react?
Well, the three entities you mentioned, none of them will react. They'll only They
No, none
think,
of them.
okay,
But
it has happened.
who is supposed to react immediately?
I would say the Supreme Court should react now. It has had far too many fatal accidents have happened because of failure of the system. It's about time that the court stepped in and made people accountable. Because the Civil Aviation Ministry controls everything. They control the DGCA, they control Airport Authority, they control Air India, and they control civil aviation. So somebody has to bell the cat.
So after the 2010 incident, wherein 138 people died in Mangalore,
58.
158 people died in Mangalore, I'm sorry. Wasn't there any sort of review? Wasn't there any sort of checks done? Wasn't there any sort of action taken to ensure that more people won't lose their lives?
That is why the Civil Aviation Advisory Council was formed. We gave the recommendations. We gave our findings. In fact, the Aerodrome division was headed by Mr. Arun Rao, who was with International Civil Aviation Organization. We gave a very detailed and strong report. The only thing that happened was when Ajit Singh took over as the minister and the DCA and others didn't like it, we were all moved out of the council. They had their own yes men in the job.
It was raining very heavily in Kerala yesterday. Almost 11 people lost their lives in landslide yesterday. It was raining pretty heavily. Why was the plane not diverted?
That is something the pilot has to answer. He's not allowed to answer. You
Sir,
see? Like when he could not land from the west on runway 28, to try and land on runway 10 with a tailwind in rain, I just can't understand. The only reason I can think of is he must have been under extreme fatigue because he's an experienced pilot. So it must have been a long flight because I understand that Air India Express had asked for extension of duty time and the DGCA has given a blanket clearance. So if they have done that without any risk assessment, it's a failure on the part of the DGCA.
Sir, it is, I was told, and I could be absolutely wrong, I was told that it is a huge process for a pilot to divert the plane. It is in fact, it's almost like impossible for a pilot to divert the plane because of the formalities that the pilot has to go through. Is there any truth in this?
It is not a formality. The standard operating procedures, you can make 2 attempts. And if you cannot make it in the second attempt, you must divert. There are enough now, like Cochin is there, in case Cochin is bad, he's just got to fly over the hill and you have Coimbatore. Coimbatore would have been clear because in the monsoons, the Western Ghats block the weather. Usually, if Calicut is bad, Coimbatore will be clear and he could have landed in Coimbatore. From what I understand, it's not confirmed. I heard he made 3 attempts. It was on the 3rd attempt he's crashed. And it's cardinal rule that your efficiency drops drastically after the 2nd attempt and you must divert. And we have a thing called the Approach and Landing Accident Reduction Training Kit. I prepared that. And all airline pilots are supposed to undergo training for that. But it's all paperwork. They just tick the boxes and they don't do anything.
Sir, what were the 5 things that you would suggest that the government should do immediately to ensure that such things doesn't occur again? Or are we going to forget everything and then life goes on? How is it going to go from here?
Government, the first thing they have to do is they have to ban landings on runway 10 during monsoons. It is positively unsafe and they have to have an independent, not the chosen people to do investigation. It has to be independent and factual, and most important, they have to make people accountable. You know, as per the DGCA rule, you have an accountable manager and you have the training head. I think they should all be held accountable.
There is one more thing that has come out in the social media, that the guiding light system and the braking system is very poor in this particular runway. Is that true?
No, there is no guiding light because Calicut does not have centerline lighting. Because centerline lighting is mandatory only if you are doing Cat 3 landings, in fog.
Achha.
It is not mandatory for rain.
But sir, for a
you
international
can
airport,
install it. When a dangerous runway like that, they could install it, it will make it better.
Okay.
If you are landing from runway 28 On the other side, you have what they call the lead-in lights. In fact, I've seen them and I've got a photograph of them somewhere. But on runway 10, there is no guidance and there is no centerline guidance light. And as far as the runway braking action is concerned, unless a proper friction testing is done and rubber is removed, braking action will be poor.
Sir, my last question. Sir, are our skies safe? Are our airports safe?
No, they are not. Because the safety audits done by DGCA team is all a farce. They go there, they have the samosas and tea. There are a few very good officers, but they'll never come up in DGCA because it's only people who are connected and the chamchas who come up in life there. So they will tick the boxes. DGCA will call a press meet, tell, they have their favored journalists who will write on paper that, oh, they have taken this action, they've taken. If you just do an audit independently, you will find that none of that has been done. Like we gave the report in 2011, and you see lives are lost today. So who is accountable?
What you're technically saying then is we increased number of airlines, we started giving licenses to private airlines and all of this without actually having a safe airport, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's indeed sad. Thank you so much for coming down.
Thank you.
Some startling revelations. An expert on safety had given a letter 9 years back to the government of India, to the Ministry of Aviation. He had given a letter 9 years back to DGCA. He had given a letter 9 years back to the International Airport Authority, but nobody took any steps. Nobody took any corrective steps. This is due to negligence. There were issues with the lighting systems there, there were issues with the braking systems there, and they were very easily letting aircraft land and take off from there. This is the value of an Indian life according to the Ministry of Aviation. Till we meet next time. Namaskar.